Hugh Freeze continues to say the Auburn Tigers are close, but I completely disagree with him. Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Uptempo Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dustin Smith. Hugh Freeze stepped to the podium for his weekly press conference to preview Auburn's upcoming matchup with the Missouri Tigers, but a whole lot came out of that presser that had nothing to do with Saturday's game versus Missouri. We have a lot to unpack on this episode of the Uptempo Podcast. Before we get started, please smash the thumbs up button, sub to the channel if you have not done that yet. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, leave a 5-star review. Go ahead and turn on your automatic downloads and follow us over there. The big news coming out of Hugh Freeze's press conference, Deari Austin is no longer a part of the team. The senior running back, Hugh Freeze worded it in a way, he said that Deari did not meet the standards, did not do what he was supposed to do and what was required of him. And it's kind of funny the way he worded it, because you can make the argument that Hugh Freeze has not really met the standards that are required of an Auburn football coach. But he worded it in a way as that a transgression had transpired from Deari's side. So you kind of wait to see what else comes out. And it appears like, from all the information that we've gathered and what's been reported, that Deari approached Hugh Freeze sometime after the Georgia game and said, hey, I'm at my 4 games. I would like to redshirt. I would still like to practice. I would like to come back next year. I just don't want to burn any more eligibility on this season. And Hugh Freeze initially said he would think about it. Turns out he thought about it. He said, no, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. And ultimately, sounds like that led to Deari no longer being on the team. Judging off of Hugh Freeze's tone and the way he answered the multiple questions that he was asked about Deari in the press conference, he seemed pretty upset. He seemed pretty agitated. So I don't think that it's a very warm feeling right now from Hugh Freeze coming to Deari. And if what's reported is accurate, and I'm only going off of those reports, because I'll tell you why I'm not even going to try to check with sources or dig deep into this too much in a second, because I think there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture stuff that matters a whole lot more than the details. But either way, if that is the case and that is the truth of what happened, I understand Hugh Freeze's side. And I understand Deari's side. Deari's been patient. Deari's waited for his turn. And now he's in his last year. He plays one more game. He's out of, he's burned his eligibility. He's burned that red shirt. And he's still not getting carries. He's still not really a part of the offense. And he probably sees the writing on the wall, if we're being honest, and knows, like, man, I can still be here next year, and Hugh Freeze probably won't be. So I understand where Deari's coming from. And I also understand Hugh Freeze's side here, where he's saying, no, you're a captain of the team. You can't just redshirt and quit playing games because you want to save another year of eligibility. Like, we need you. We're already thin at running back with the Darrell Robinson injury. And you can't be a captain and then kind of request this and still be a leader of the team, but bow out of the competition. So, I think Hugh probably made the right move in not allowing it, if that's all the case, right? But that's just my take on that situation. But I'm going to tell you why I don't really care. I don't really care about the ifs and the buts and who's right or who's wrong, because it speaks to a bigger culture problem to me. This is a guy that Hugh Freeze has raved about in the past being a leader, being a guy that's on the culture council, being a guy that was a captain of the team. So are things so bad? Are things so toxic that you drove that guy that everyone has spoke highly of up until now? And people aren't speaking down on him, but up until this situation, there's never been a bad word or a bad narrative out there about Deari Austin. Is it so bad and so toxic behind the scenes that you drove that guy to this point? Or are you picking the wrong people to be captains that, when adversity hits, shouldn't be captains and never should have been captains? which it's one of those, right? Either way, it's not acceptable. Either way, it's not okay. Either way, it's a problem that speaks to a bigger issue that continues to haunt Auburn and is going to be it's going to be the narrative when Hugh Freeze's tenure at Auburn is looked back upon in the future. And that's that they just don't know how to win on Saturday, and the things that take place during the week lead to that. It's a losing culture, at least on that side of the ball. And where Auburn is at right now is those players have been patient. Everyone, the fans, everyone's been patient. But what's going on in that team is you have a bunch of 4 and 5 star guys, highly recruited guys. A lot of them won state championships, and when they were in high school, they all come to Auburn with one goal, that's to win football games. And they continue to lose in frustrating fashion. So, of course, the frustrations are boiling over. You don't need to have any kind of inside knowledge of what's going on to know there's got to be infighting happening. You don't think the defensive coaches are frustrated with the offensive coaches and the offensive side of the ball? You don't think the players on defense are not frustrated with what's going on the offensive side of the ball? Of course they are. It's not all unicorns and rainbows where they're just like, oh man, we're going to get it figured out. No. There's probably a lot of arguing and frustration going on behind this. Like, of course, that's what happens. When you go out and get these caliber of players that were all highly recruited, that could have went anywhere in the country, and they came here, and now it's not working. Of course, that's obvious that it would arrive at this point. I have a big issue with this narrative that Hugh Freeze continues to push that we're close. The only thing Auburn's close to is having an interim head coach and need to make a decision on who the next one's going to be. Auburn's not close to winning under Hugh Freeze. And even if they beat Missouri on Saturday, you're not close because there's so many bigger issues that plague the program at this point that cannot be resolved until Hugh Freeze is out and a new person comes in to fix them. Auburn's not close. Hugh Freeze said everything that he needed to say in the postgame when he said, I don't know how to get us over the hump. I'm scratching and clawing trying to figure out how to get us to win these close games. But if you don't know how to do that, then you don't know how to do your job. And it would be one thing if we said, well, Auburn doesn't win the close games, but there's not even any blowouts, you know? Like Auburn's not even a front running team. You know, you have those teams where when they can go out and they get off to a hot start and they just blow people out and 38-0 before you look up. Auburn's not even that team. Auburn was up 10-3 at halftime over Georgia, and nobody thought Auburn was going to win. Because the culture's shot. You can't say you're close when we bought the we're close, the first close loss to Georgia. We bought the we're close, the first loss to Alabama, right? We bought close then. We got a little frustrated with close after the Cal game last season, the Arkansas game last season, then Vanderbilt and Missouri. At what point is it not we're close, but that's just who you are? It looks the same. We're in year 3, halfway through it, and it looks exactly the same. I saw nothing versus Georgia that made me feel like Auburn's any closer to getting over the hump and winning elite games, especially in the SEC. It doesn't feel like we're close at all. You don't get to keep coming up in second place in a race time after time and keep saying, I'm going to win. I'm going to get first one day. Eventually, no, you're just not capable of beating the guy ahead of you. And we just have enough of a sample size now. We have 2.5 seasons worth to know this is what it is. This is the way that Auburn will lose games under Hugh Freeze. not capable of putting up 4 quarters of offense. And that's the other part that bothers me about the we're close. The only reason Auburn is close in these football games, and again, I want to specify, Auburn's close in the football games. Auburn's not actually close to pulling off the wins. And y'all all know that because I've had a lot of people that were at the game reach out to me and say the moment that Georgia went down and got that field goal, they started to lose hope. And the moment that Georgia tied it, they knew they could feel in the stadium that Auburn was going to lose. That tells you a lot. I've had multiple people tell me that, and I've heard reporters that were at the game in the press box say that as well. That there was a feeling in the stadium at 10-10 versus Georgia, Saturday night at home, that Auburn was not going to win that game. If 88,000 people all feel that, you're not close. But the only reason the scoreboard is close is because of DJ Durkin's defense. And the only reason that first Iron Bowl was close, Hugh's first year, and that first Georgia game was close that year, was because of Ron Roberts' defense. You know, I hate Ron Roberts' decision to not rush Jalen Milroe at the end of the game. But if you look back over that season, honestly, that Auburn team was in a lot of the games that they were in and or won because of the defense, Ron Roberts' defense. And mind you, that was also the Philip Montgomery year. So you did go to Vanderbilt and score some points. You did go to Arkansas and score some points. Auburn's best SEC road performances under Hugh Freeze were the year that Philip Montgomery was calling the plays, or whoever was calling the plays that year, right? But you haven't even had those performances in the last two with Hugh Freeze being the main guy on the offense. So the only reason the scoreboard is even tight is because of the defensive side of the ball. You're not winning games 38-30 or losing games 38-35 and saying we're close. It's the side of the ball that Hugh Freeze runs. The side of the ball that Hugh Freeze is in charge of, the offensive guru that he's supposed to be, the quarterback whisperer he claimed to be when Auburn hired him. That's the side of the ball that is the reason Auburn's not winning football games. They're all low-scoring defensive affairs where you're like, man, if Auburn just scored 21, 24 points, well, they would have won. Don't even have to have an explosive elite offense with the defense that Hugh Freeze has had in his 3 seasons. If he was capable of putting an average offense, he'd be winning football games. So you missed me with the we're close because the culture is nowhere near close. It's a losing culture. I've been saying it. I said it before Hugh Freeze was hired, that Auburn football had dissolved into a losing culture, and that it would be his job to pick it back up. And obviously that's not the case. He's improved the talent on the roster, and that's about it. I guess Auburn lose not really getting blown out. But ultimately, man, that whole thing misses me. And there's something else that was pretty telling to me. He talked in the post-game conference, or he talked, in the Monday presser, that he talked about how the Auburn defense only had, I want to say he said 22. I might be wrong on that, but he said, low number in the 20s amount of missed assignments on defense, and it was by far the best of the year, right? He said, but we had 11 of those missed assignments on Georgia's 17-play drive. He said, so the defense has been playing great, but when they needed to step up, they didn't do it. And the same things, they executed well in the first half. He said on defense, we saw the same formations in the first half and executed them well that we saw in the second half, and we didn't execute well, and we didn't get to the right spot on that 17-play drive. And he alluded to that, that's an example of not being able to step up and make the plays to win. And he didn't say it in a tone. He talked about that on the offensive side of the ball as well. So he wasn't saying it in a tone like he was throwing the defense under the bus. It wasn't that kind of thing. But what stood out to me was Do you think that has anything to do with the three and outs that you had in a row on the offensive side of the ball before that? Like, is that a possibility that maybe the defense that hadn't given up a 17-play drive all game gives up one in the fourth quarter because you haven't moved the ball in the entire second half? That's probably what it was. They were probably physically tired because they have to continue to come out there and save the offense's ass time and time again. And let's rewind to the previous two SEC losses. Can you say that about the defense in that game? Because I would argue the only reason you even scored a touchdown was because the defense put you in position. And the defense got the stops to give you the ball back. And you didn't make them. What did you do versus Oklahoma when you got the ball? You got sacked for a safety. No. I can't get on board with that. I understand what he's trying to get at. And again, he's not throwing the defense under the bus. But still, the whole reason that happened is a direct correlation of you not picking up first downs on 3 straight drives. Defense is gassed, man. They're tired. And on top of that, let's say they weren't tired. Let's say they were peak physical condition and they didn't get tired, even though they kept having to come back out there after 3 and outs. Georgia's a really good football team with a great coaching staff that were coached really well. How many times do you think you can stop them? They're going to get theirs. They only scored 20. And you couldn't get to 21. They scored 20 and you still lost by double digits. Look, I think Jackson Arnold scored twice. I think he scored the play before the fumble, and I think he scored on the play that was called the fumble. He could have just held on to the football. He could have just held on to the ball. And if this was in a vacuum, if we were just talking about this one game, we could rant and rave about the officials all day. But we have the whole Hugh Freeze era as a backdrop to this conversation. And it always looks the same. Yes, Georgia was offside, and I think he scored, all of that. You know, none of those discussions happens if he just holds on to the football for half of one more second. If he just completes the QB sneak and holds on to the football and hands it to the ref, we don't have this whole conversation at all. But of course it happened that way. Because something always bad happens under Hugh Freeze. And of course, you didn't even come close to sniffing the end zone after that. Of course. Hugh Freeze was asked about quarterback change. He basically said, no. Look, I think Hugh's going down with Jackson. And, you know, I tweeted it out the day that Jackson Arnold signed. That I think that would be the final nail in the coffin for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And, so he's just going to go down with Jackson. And it is what it is. So, you know, you would think that there would be some kind of adjustments. You would think that there would be some kind of Ashton Daniels or Deuce Knight, give the young guy a shot. Something. You think there would be some kind of something different at this point. But I don't think that's going to happen as long as Hugh Freeze is the coach at Auburn. I just don't. So he seems like he is he's still bringing them into the post-game press conferences, and reporters are like having to dance around asking the obvious question about Jackson's play, but you know, he's sitting right there and you don't want to make him feel bad. It's like it just appears like they're tied at the hip and he's made that decision. And it was a bad evaluation. And I'm not saying that Jackson Arnold can't be a productive college quarterback in the right system. Like, what if Jackson Arnold was on Ole Miss, right? I mean, they're winning with a D2 transfer, like they're down to like their third string quarterback or something. Like, no matter who you give Lane Kiffin, they find ways to move the ball on offense, right? But a quarterback with that many issues, that's that big of a project, coming to a head coach that also has his own issues, the problems that Hugh Freeze has. Well, it was always a bad matchup. It was always a bad marriage. That the chances of it working were very, very, low percentage. So I think he's going to go down with Jackson. I think he's content to do that. He was also asked about Deari Austin because the obvious questions would be rose about depth at the running back position, and he said he would have to check with the trainers to see how long it was going to be until Darrell was ready. I thought that was very strange, and it's kind of more of just a peek into unprepared. Like, okay, they say the narrative in the story is that because Hugh can't be the primary play caller because he's trying to be the primary play caller and call the offense and be a part of the offense, but also have to do the CEO, head coach, and stuff. If you don't know when, if you don't know when Darrell Robinson's coming back, especially with what you have going on now with the running back position, if you don't already have that like date and timeline like in your head and right at your fingertips, that tells me a lot. That tells me a whole lot. You're not even you're supposed to be doing what CEO stuff are you doing then? There's just too much. There's just too much slipping through the cracks. Just an unprepared football team. It looks unprepared. And then you had a bye week, so you actually came out and looked prepared versus Georgia. And then the second that Kirby got to go in there and make some adjustments at halftime, you were not prepared. You had no kind of pivot for him. So, yeah, you were able to take the extra bye week and draw up a cool opening 15 to 20 play script. That's great. That don't win football games. Ultimately, you lost by 10 to a bitter rival at home again. And yeah, I just think it's become very, very clear to everybody that Hugh Freeze is not the guy. He can continue to say that Auburn is close as much as he wants. And yeah, like I said, the only reason Auburn's close on the scoreboard is because of the defense, not his offense. And I don't feel like, from a culture standpoint, I don't feel like Auburn is close at all to actually making those plays and actually winning those games. It certainly doesn't feel like them. I mean, when these games are taking place, we say it in like our member group chat, we're like, and this bad thing will happen. And then it does. There's just no belief. No one feels like we're close. So that's where we're at, man. Very, very frustrating. We'll be back later in the week with another episode of the Uptempo podcast. Members, stay on the lookout. Got a special podcast with all this stuff kind of going on where I explain things a little more in detail and kind of want to get y'all's thoughts and all that. So stay tuned to the members tab for that. And like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on X at DMXShot28. I will see you on the next one. God bless, and War Damn Eagle. I'm out.